What's going on, YouTube? It's Dr. Spaz back again with another absolute banger for you here today. And today, we got a good one. We're looking at defeating Bloonarius. Bloonarius has been very troublesome for a lot of people, and so I was advised to make a video about it. Not to mention a video about all the other bosses as well. This is just a general guide to take care of Bloonarius in most situations. I can't guarantee a victory every single week, especially since Ninja Kiwi has been changing things up with like towers and everything like that the past few months. It's been absolutely awesome, but the inconsistency makes this hard to guarantee a victory every single time, but most of the time you should be victorious. If you like the video, like the video. If you like the video, subscribe, ring that bell, drop a comment, let me know down below what other videos you want to see from BTD6 next. So when you're defeating a boss, there's a few things you have to take into consideration, right? Every boss is difficult in one way or another. Some are harder than others, especially some weeks are harder than others. But at the end of the day, the boss is meant to be a challenge. But something that holds true for every single week and every single time is that you need to find a way to make an immense amount of money so then you can defeat the boss, especially at the late tiers. And the early tiers, you know, tiers 1 through 3, you can usually manage without having an immense amount of money, especially for, you know, the amount of rounds that there are. But it'll catch up to you real quick, especially tier 4, tier 5, if you are financially prepared. If you are not financially prepared. And this week, this one's a little bit different because there is a restriction on the towers that limits you to 5 towers for each type here. But since there's a restriction on each tower, and there's 5 of each tower, well, what is one way to make an immense amount of money? Farms, right? There's other ways, of course, but ultimately farms are generally the best way, right? That's kind of the way you want to go. And there's a restriction on farms. You can only have 5 farms. Since you can only have 5 farms, you have to get creative. And most weeks, there is no restrictions on farms at all. This week and last week, there was restrictions on farms, which kind of surprised me. In most weeks, there is no restrictions on farms whatsoever. It's very rare that they do anything like this with farming. So nonetheless, if you're on a map that has a significant amount of room, right, and you have a map and you have a boss fight that has no restrictions on farming, you just gotta farm crazy, right? You farm crazy, you should be able to beat the boss. If you farm crazy, you should be able to beat elite boss. There's more to it than that, but basically, long story short, farming is essential. Farming is key. Focusing on farming will guarantee you victory as long as you do the other stuff right. As long as you got the money, you should be just fine. Nonetheless, but because there's a restriction on farming, I'll kind of focus on that a little bit, but I'll focus more on the other stuff. So long term, you have to think about how to farm correctly. In this situation, I'll farm a little bit differently. As long as you focus on doing a lot of farms and as high of a tier of farms as possible, you should be just fine. So you have to think about that and how to do that efficiently. There's lots of tutorials online on how to fight bosses with farming. There's lots of tutorials on how to farm in general. I even upload a couple of videos myself, so go check those out. I'll have those linked down in the description below on how to properly farm to kind of get a general idea. Nothing's perfect. You don't have to do anything crazy, but you guys get the idea, right? So that's one thing to think about. And then the other thing to think about is, so with bosses, there's 5 tiers. Whether you're doing normal or elite, there's 5 tiers. You need to prepare yourself. You need to think long term. What do you know that you'll need to prepare to defeat the boss at each tier, right? You know, obviously at tier 1, tier 2, you won't need anything crazy, so it's kind of, especially with Bloonarius here, how he's only at 50% health, but still, you won't need anything super crazy in order to defeat bosses at the lower tiers, but ultimately, at the end of the day, you still need something fierce, you need something strong, right? And so that's why I kind of want to kind of go into the towers and what to kind of use in the early rounds. So in the early rounds, you'll see, so usually what you kind of want to start with is a couple of these guys right here. You want to go 104 for the Ninja Monkeys, and the reason why for round 1, or for tier 1 and tier 2, even I'll even go here. I usually don't use these for tier 2. I do some other stuff, and I'll show you later. But for tier 1, this tower right here is absolutely phenomenal for bosses. The strength and how well it does against bosses is absolutely unparalleled, especially for the price. Now keep in mind, each one of these will cost like, it's like 8,000 $8,000 or something like that. So it's kind of up there, but it's nothing astronomical. It's not like, you know, some of the other tier 4 towers can be way more expensive, right? But anyway, so basically having a couple of these guys it's perfect. It'll get the job done. In fact, fun fact, when first playing Bloonarius this week, I ran into a problem because I was killing him too fast. I was defeating the boss way too quickly. Since he has 50% health, I was defeating him way too quickly because I placed a few of these guys down. I defeated him way too quickly. At the health bar for each and every boss, they do something special. Bloonarius' specialty, I guess, whatever you want to call it. Every time that you hit the skull for the on the health bar, he spits out a bunch of balloons, right? And obviously, the higher the tier, the more balloons, and the stronger the balloons, and stuff like that. But like for tier 1, he still spits out a bunch of balloons. So I'm defeating the boss extremely quickly, which means I'm hitting multiple skulls basically at once, and he spits so many balloons out it became overwhelming. I ended up killing the boss and doing fine there, but I died to the balloons. So that's something to kind of take into consideration on how good this tower can be, right? And then for so I'll show that here, and I'll kind of showcase on how to handle the balloons in here in just a second. But some of the other towers that you can kind of use to take care of all the extra balloons and just take care of Bloonarius in general. So for the balloons, maybe early round, something that you can do is a spike factory if it's available. Ninja Kiwi takes away the spike factory quite often. So if it is available, this is a good option, especially in the middle path or maybe even the top path if you're trying to take care of balloons. But usually middle path is pretty good, especially when you're doing things with like Dread Balloon and stuff like that, because they have those rock balloons. So ultimately at the end of the day, Spike Factory is a really good option. We'll take care of the balloons, and I'll show you one really good trick that'll take care of the balloons up until Bloonarius starts spitting out like crazy Moab class balloons. But anyway, so for tier 1, so I want to take care of all of these here first, right? Give me just a second. Okay, so now that I have all these buildings set up, I'm actually going to set the ninja right here. Unfortunately, we're starting at round 39. I say unfortunately, because yeah, it does give us a bunch of money, which is great. But I say unfortunately, I would much rather start at round 1 because I can start farming early, and I could probably double this amount of money by the time we get to round 40. Or maybe not quite, but we can definitely have more than this here, right? But hey, we got to work with what we got to work with. If you do farming, like basically with farming, if you focus on as little, putting in as little money into defense as possible in the early rounds, like I was mentioning in the other videos, and focus on that extra money, investing it into farming, especially the early rounds, and you keep reinvesting, you'll make an immense amount of money, especially really quick. But either way, we got to work with what we got to work with, and I do know that for sure we need one of these. And surprisingly, we actually only need one of these. We don't need anything crazy. So something to take into consideration with Bloonarius is how to kind of defeat him and how to defeat him quickly, right? Ultimately, at the end of the day, you want to defeat a boss as quickly as possible so you have less to worry about and you can focus more time on farming correctly. You can kind of multitask, but at the end of the day, if you're allowing a boss to go too far and take up too many rounds and just take up too much time in general, that's less time that you can focus on farming correctly. You can multitask to a certain degree, but at the end of the day, it can become overwhelming very quickly. But anyway, so long story short with Bloonarius, especially since he has 50% health, this will be a lot easier this week, which is why I'm doing Bloonarius this week, right? The map is kind of annoying, especially with the little amount of space that we have to work with, but ultimately at the end of the day, we'll be able to beat him just fine without any issues, and we'll be able to beat him quickly as well. So the first thing I did is I put the 104 ninja right here. Something that if you guys do not know about, he can damage bosses or just pretty much any Moab class balloon without them being in range. They can be significantly outside of range. Not the entire map, it's not global, but they can be significantly outside of the range. Like they can be like down here or something like that, and he'll still throw his C4 or whatever sticky bomb it is at them, and it'll still latch on, and like he'll still throw it at them. So I'm putting him more over here instead of right here at the beginning because he'll be able to throw his sticky bomb, his C4, whatever you want to call it, at Bloonarius, as soon as Bloonarius shows up, even though he'll be outside of range. And obviously he's going in his direction, and he'll still be able to throw him all the way out here. I can almost guarantee you we're not even going to be able to see Bloonarius get this far at all. And if he does, I'll be kind of shocked. I might throw a second one down later, but who knows? We'll see. But either way, at the end of the day, when it comes to handling a tier 1 boss, handling a tier 1 boss is what you would expect would be the easiest way and the easiest tier to handle a boss, which is great. Some key ways to kind of handle tier 1 bosses is this is probably the best way to do it. There might be a couple other really good ways to handle a tier 1 boss, but ultimately this is probably the best way to do it, especially with Bloonarius. He'll take care of Bloonarius, no issue. Maybe having a couple of them, like 2 or 3 of these, he'll take care of Bloonarius just fine at tier 1. And they can even, like, you can even use these guys at tier 2 if you have a few of them. They'll do just fine as well. Some other ways that you can kind of do it is if you get a few of these guys, if you do a middle path, you get a few of these guys, they'll do fantastic against boss balloons as well. Not just in Bloonarius, but they'll do fantastic against boss balloons in general. Even if you can't afford a tier 4, the tier 3 will still do really well, especially since they focus on Moab class balloons, right? And at the end of the day, a boss is considered to be a Moab class balloons. There's some discrepancies with that, but you kind of get the general idea, right? Some other things that kind of handle Moab class balloons is a bottom path tack shooter. Same thing with bosses as well. A bottom path tack shooter, especially if you get to the tack zone, if you can afford to do a tack zone. I usually have a tack zone at tier 1, if not tier 2 at the latest, but tack zones don't do too much at the later tiers. So I try to get him at tier 1, especially if I do the farming correctly. If I can't, I get him at tier 2 plus a couple of other things, but this guy by himself will take care of any tier 1 boss, unless it's Dreadbloon. Dreadbloon has his immunities and everything, but a tack zone in most situations will take care of any tier 1 boss with no issue. Some other things you kind of take into consideration when you're trying to take out a tier 1 or potentially even a tier 2 boss is a 205 or maybe even 204, but specifically an elite defender. 205 sniper, they do very well against bosses, especially if you focus them on strong. Yeah, so those are the kind of the main towers that you want to focus on when it comes to a tier 1, maybe a tier 2 boss. Like with tier 2, you kind of want to get a few of those towers as like a combination. You don't just want to focus on one tower. One tower won't take down a tier 2 boss in most situations. But either way, those are the towers that you kind of want to focus on for tier 1 especially. And some honorable mentions to kind of go with a tier 2 boss or a tier 1 boss and sometimes a tier 2 boss is a spike factory. If a spike factory is available, there's some options usually with a spike factory. Like this week, I won't use them, but a spike factory is usually very good in multiple different ways when it comes to bosses and what you can do with them. And then also a couple other things that you want to take into consideration when you're fighting bosses. Super monkeys are typically pretty good with bosses, and then Dartling. I'll actually get more Dartling gunners later, but for tier 1 and sometimes tier 2, you can get a good Dartling gunner going, and they'll do very good against a boss in most situations. But realistically, what you want to focus on is specifically this guy. If you can utilize a couple of these guys early on for tier 1, they'll get the job done. They'll be just fine. Now, the other thing with Bloonarius is, yes, we can defeat him pretty quickly by taking care of this, but the one thing that we have to worry about is the balloons, as I was mentioning earlier. With the balloons, they can become very overwhelming very quickly. As I was mentioning, if you defeat him too fast, he spits all of his balloons out, and obviously every time he hits the skull, he just keeps spitting them out, so they can become very overwhelming very quickly. So that's why, especially with this week, you don't want to defeat him too fast, even though I really want to, right? I typically want to try and defeat him as quickly as possible. This is the first week that I had to defeat a boss while holding back. I've never ran into that problem before. There is one critical tower that is absolutely perfect for Bloonarius. Bloonarius spits out those balloons, right? And all the way through tier 4 in most situations, the Spirit of the Forest will handle all balloons. Almost every single balloon it throws out, they get annihilated immediately by the vines from the Spirit of the Forest. You make a 105, or I mean, if you guess you want to do, 205, it don't matter, but specifically you want 105 so that it has the lead popping ability. Anyway, so basically, the Spirit of the Forest, as soon as the balloons touch the spikes, they just get destroyed immediately. And the spikes handle Moab class balloons extremely well as well. A Spirit of the Forest can go into the 90s on the right map just by himself. It is absolutely phenomenal. At the end of the day, once you get into the later tiers, like you get to tier 4, maybe tier 4, definitely tier 5. That's when you gotta get some other stuff to take care of those extra balloons, but by that point you should have other stuff taken care of it automatically anyway. You shouldn't have to worry about it. If you can kind of get this guy as early as quickly with Bloonarius, especially tier 1, you will never have to worry about balloons at all, period. You just have to defeat Bloonarius as quickly as you can. Unfortunately, with this week, we're starting at round 39, and I won't have enough money to get him going. So basically, we'll have to worry about getting him for tier 2, right? So we'll have him by tier 2, and that'll be great. But for tier 1, something simple that I'll just do, something to take care of the balloons. You want something like he'll spit out ceramics, right? Something that's really good with ceramics is something that uses fire or energy or something that just isn't a normal attack. Or maybe even bombs of some sort, like explosions, like a bottom path bomb shooter here, like this guy right here, that you can pair him up with a 204, or if you need something a little bit faster, a 024. You pair up a couple of these guys who'll take care of the ceramics, no problem. Who'll take care of those extra balloons, no problem. What I personally done is I put a village right here. I'll make him a 420, so you get the camo detection, you get the buff for the primary towers and everything like that. And I go top path. Tax shooter, make him a 402, of course. Since you get the Ring of Fire buff as well with the bottom path. But anyway, so basically, this combination right here shouldn't leak any balloons at all. If he does, it's very little. I'm not worried about it at all. I actually have not tried the bottom path in this situation, so I might try it for the heck of it. Who knows? We'll see. But either way, we got something to defeat Bloonarius for tier 1. We got something to take care of all the extra balloons. We're good to go. We're good to go. But before we do that, so we're good to go on tier 1 for the boss. We're good to go there. So now I'm going to start worrying about farming because there's a limitation on farming space. Because there's a limitation on farming space, I already know exactly how I'm going to do it this week. You guys can kind of follow along, kind of do that general idea as well if you wish. But at the end of the day, as long as you focus on farming early and as much as you can, and you focus less on defense while also still taking care of the balloons, and you kind of do this general idea for a tier 1, you should be just fine. If I can help it, I have Spirit of the Forest by tier 1. If I can help it, I have Spirit of the Forest by tier 1 for Bloonarius. If not, it's tier 2 guaranteed. For tier 2, I'll end up selling this setup right here. Anyway, let's go ahead and get started. Alright, so now we're here at Bloonarius. You can see he's already throwing his sticky bombs at Bloonarius. You can see we're taking care of the balloons, no issues. We already hit one skull. We're not having any issues here whatsoever. I could focus this guy on strong here just to take care of Bloonarius a little bit quicker, which is totally fine by me. We're having no issues whatsoever. We leaked one balloon. Totally fine. We beat him super quickly. One round, no issues whatsoever. That was fantastic. Now we're going to focus on more farming. As I'm focusing on farming here and just getting more money built up in general here, something else I wanted to mention that since there's a limitation on farms here, since there's a restriction on farming in general here, villages are key here. A bottom path village can help make an immense amount of money if you have them near towers, have them near farms, all that good stuff. You have to get creative when it comes to the bosses, and you have to get creative when it comes to just farming in general with restrictions like this. And having those villages is a really good way to help out with that. You can take a, you can absorb more villages. I'm sorry, you can absorb more farms with the bottom path tier 5 village, which means once you absorb the villages, you can place more farms down. You can place the village near towers to help generate extra cash, so on and so forth. But then also another way to assist with making some funds is to do a bottom path engineer or doing a couple of bottom path engineers. Because when you do a bottom path engineer with like the trap or whatever it does, they can make a good amount of money. I didn't do it here because it's not really necessary. We'll actually be, by doing what I'm doing here, we'll actually be making too much money. It's kind of funny. So you guys should see what I mean, especially when it comes to tier 4, tier 5. We'll just have so much firepower at that point that you should have no issues defeating those bosses whatsoever, especially if you did the farming correctly. Alright, so now we're back here. We're about to start tier 2 for the boss. I bought an extra one of these 104 ninjas. They should be able to still take care of Bloonarius just fine. We shouldn't really have any issues. I might buy a third one. We'll see how it performs. I might put the third one right here. We'll see. I doubt I'll need to, but ultimately I ended up getting Spirit of the Forest. As you guys can see, I got rid of the tack shooters and everything down here. So I ended up getting Spirit of the Forest. I ended up just buying him, so that's why his spirit, his tracks aren't filled up here. But also at the same time, while we're taking care of Bloonarius, I'm going to pay attention to how quickly we can defeat him, and to make sure that these spikes are defeating the balloons, which we should have no issue on that at all. But I'm also going to focus on getting this guy leveled up to a tier 4, and then getting this guy leveled up as well. We're good over here for right now. We'll get a tier 5 here by the time, I believe by time tier 3 shows up. We'll see, but we'll see about that. But let's go ahead and see what we can do with Bloonarius here. Yeah, so we're defeating him fairly quickly already, which is great. Yeah, I'm just gonna save it for the farm. We shouldn't have any issue defeating him whatsoever. Let's see. We're gonna go ahead and grab this guy right now. If I do need to buy a tier 3, or I'm sorry, if I do need to buy a third 104 ninja, I'll do that here in just a second. But I don't think we'll need to. No, we won't. So that means I'm going to go ahead and get this guy upgraded. This guy should be in range, yes. And we're good. Now we just need 15,000 to get the Monkeyopolis to absorb the farms and put them back down. And there we go. Alright, so we're going to absorb those. We're going to put both of these guys down here. I might have did this wrong. That's alright. Here, we're definitely going to throw the one right here, of course. Let's get started here. Throw another one down. Should be able to be in range. There we go. Yes. 3. There we go. You guys can kind of see how I'm doing this now. We're going to get these guys to tier 4s and eventually a tier 5 as well. But also another thing I'm taking to think of, right, is we want to focus on long term. We need to defeat tier 4 and tier 5 pretty easily. And how's the best way to do that? Paragons. So we'll have a Paragon set up by tier 4, which will be great. I don't think we'll have it set up for tier 3. Yeah, we definitely won't have it set up for tier 3, which is totally fine by me, but we'll definitely have one set up for tier 4, and we probably will have 2 for tier 5. Actually, you know what? We might have 3 for tier 5. We'll definitely have 2 for tier 5. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and grab this guy right here with the Wall Street. That's going to help us make an immense amount of money, and then now I'm also going to focus on getting Banana Central here. If you have a harder boss, especially if you're tier 2, maybe the health is increased or something like that, and you have something that's a little bit more difficult, and you need a little bit more firepower by tier 2, obviously getting a few of the 104s will help out a lot, but getting a combination of that, maybe a couple super monkeys, you know, the tack zone, that sort of thing. Getting a combination of those few will take care of tier 2 just fine, usually in most situations. But tier 3 is usually when there's a big jump up, right? With tier 3, there's usually a huge health increase, and that's where you need to start getting stuff like the Dartling Gunner. The Dartling Gunner is a very good tower for the top path and the middle path when it comes to handling boss balloons. When you have the combination of the two especially, they can usually handle tier 3 and tier 4 just fine. And if you have like a little bit weaker boss, like with Bloonarius here, they might even be able to defeat tier 5 Bloonarius as well. But I won't test that, but I'm sure other people have. So I'd be kind of curious to know how they perform. But ultimately, the Dartling Gunner here, with the Ray of Doom and the Mad here, the combination, just one or the other, if you have one of these two here, should be able to take care of a tier 3 just fine. You really shouldn't have any other issues, especially if you're able to afford a combination of the two. You'll be able to defeat a tier 3 absolutely very quickly. So you really shouldn't have any issues with that at all. Now, obviously, as I was mentioning before, Ninja Kiwi's been doing restrictions on towers and maps and this, that, or the other with bosses lately, which has been absolutely awesome. It's been fantastic, but sometimes they don't allow the Dartling Gunner at all. So if you need a backup or something, Ace, bottom path Ace is really good. Getting a couple of these guys going is really good for bosses. Are one of my favorite and a lot of people's favorites if it's available. Going bottom path Druid here, going Avatar of the Wrath. So with the bottom path Druids here, if you get 5 of these guys, see how it says stack up 5 times. You get 5 of these guys and then 1 of this guy, of course, and you stack them really close together. They are absolutely phenomenal. They're extremely powerful. So you just have this set up right here. You should be able to handle any tier 3 boss in most situations, unless it's Dreadballoon, of course, because it has the immunities. But you have this set up right here, especially if you get like maybe some overclocking, or you get an alchemist with it, or a 203 village or something like that with the MIB. You know, you get something like that going, you really shouldn't have any issues whatsoever when it comes to a tier 3 druid. I'm sorry, a tier 3 boss. Here in today's boss, here this week's boss, I can't really do that. I mean, I could put it up and set it up right here and everything like that, but I'm not really necessarily worried about it. Honestly, we'll do something else entirely different. A couple other honorable mentions to handling tier 3 druids. I keep saying druid. To handling tier 3 bosses. The super monkeys are really good for handling bosses, whether it's top path, middle path, or even bottom path. Super monkeys, especially top path, because eventually you can get to true sun god, or even the vengeful sun god if you can get up there, if you have the monkey knowledge for that. So super monkeys are pretty good for that. Also, as I was mentioning earlier, we kind of want to prepare for a Paragon, right? So what I'll end up initially doing is something I know that's going to be a really good Paragon for this week's boss is the Dart Monkey, because of a couple different reasons. One, there's a restriction for Paragons this week because there's a tower restriction. So something that's really good when you're handling Paragons is you want to spam a crap ton out of whatever, you know, Paragon that you want to do, like in this case for a Boomerang, right? In order to get a Glaive Dominus, what you want to do is spam a bunch of towers to get a higher degree with the Paragon, right? Well, you can't really do that, right? You can't really do that with this week's boss. We have a restriction on 5, right? You can still get a Paragon, right? But it's going to be a low level. With the Dart Monkey, if you have the monkey knowledge for it, you can get 2 tier 5 bottom path Dart Monkeys. You can get 2 of these guys, and then also you can get another one of these guys. So a big thing with Paragons, if you have Paragons, a big thing with Paragons is if you spend a bunch of money on towers, because obviously Paragons absorb a bunch of the towers, absorb all of the tower type. If you absorb all the tower type, and those towers that get absorbed are pretty expensive, like you dumped a bunch of money into it, and I think it's like up to 250,000. If you dump a bunch of money into it, you'll get a decently high degree. And then obviously if you get, you know, a bunch of pops, like it pops a bunch of balloons with the Paragon, or before you make it a Paragon, then that adds on top of that as well. But that's a whole nother video for another day. But long story short, with the Dart Monkey Paragon, we'll get 2 of these guys, which will help out when it comes to the degree. Plus we'll get an extra one of these, which is a good amount of money when it comes to setting up a higher level degree Paragon as well. We'll get the pops taken care of. We already got a top path Banana Central here, so we're good on farming. We're good to go on farming. We're not going to do any other farming. I could put some Buccaneers down, you know, I can do some stuff like that, maybe set up a Buccaneer Paragon or something. I'm not really that worried about it, to be honest with you. A Dart Monkey Paragon, especially if you have the monkey knowledge for it, it'll be just fine. It'll take care of Bloonarius for you just fine. I could do, you know, Ninja Paragon, especially since we got some pops with these guys, but I'm really not worried about it at all. We'll get a couple others here, but we'll see how we do. Ultimately, we're going to get right back into it. I'm going to set up some Dart Monkeys. Whoops. I'm going to set up some Dart Monkeys right here at the beginning. I'm going to do top path here. Oh, whoops, I didn't get the other guy here. With this map, the balloons come from 2 different directions. So I kind of have to split where we're going to go with this. Put one right here? No. We'll actually get rid of the ninjas here. The ninjas are good for bosses, but they're not really that good for bosses. They're at the later tiers, I should say. We're gonna get this guy going. A 0-2-5 is almost is the way to go in almost every situation, for the record. All right, now we'll get this. All right, so now we pretty much have the Dart Monkey set up in the way we want. So they'll get those pops, which is good, but we still need, we're gonna put this guy right here. We still need a middle path. We need 2 middle paths. Well, actually, no. We'll see how the pots go with this guy. If not, I'll end up selling him and do the middle path as I was talking about earlier. I don't know what I was thinking there. Alright, so now we're about to face the tier 3 boss, which is going to be great. I'm going to focus these guys on strong so they can focus as much as humanly possible, or monkey possible, at focusing on Bloonarius. I'm not going to get this upgrade right now whatsoever. He's not going to really help us at all. He's just going to be there for the Paragon, so I'm not even going to waste the money on him just yet. We'll get him later. We'll get the Paragon done maybe tier 4, probably tier 5. We'll see. We'll kind of decide it from by the time we get to a tier 4 and kind of go from there. Now, we still have some money to work with, which is great. So what I'm going to do... I thought I could put it there. I guess we'll put it right here. And right here. First up is going to be the Mad, and then I don't know if we'll have enough of this tier for the Bloonarius. We should. We're at 33,000. Yeah, so we'll get the Rod here shortly, but this shouldn't be an issue at all when it comes to defeating a tier 3 Bloonarius. So let's see what these Dartling Gunners can do. So easy. We're not having any issues whatsoever. The only annoying thing is I gotta pick up those crates, which is totally fine. We'll get the Ray of Doom now. Let me pick these up. Alright. Yeah, we're beating him very quickly. Your ultimate goal is to defeat a boss within a couple of rounds. If you can do that, you'll be A-okay. Like I was mentioning earlier, the less you have to worry about a boss, like the quicker you can defeat him and the quicker you can get rid of them, the better off you are and the more you can focus on farming and other things if you wish. But in this situation, since we have the farming done, we're just going to focus on getting these dart monkeys as many pots as humanly possible as well. Or monkey possible if you want to say it in that way. Alright, so we're coming up to tier 4 here relatively shortly, and some kind of highlights of what towers to use for tier 4 if you don't have a Paragon by that point already. Ultimately, at the end of the day, you should definitely have a Paragon by tier 4. If you do not have a Paragon by tier 4, something went wrong financially. If you can't afford a Paragon by tier 4, even if it's a lower level Paragon by tier 4, especially for an elite boss, I know this is just a normal boss, but elite bosses, if you don't have a Paragon by tier 3, you're typically screwed. But anyway, if you don't have some sort of Paragon by tier 4 for a regular boss, that's totally okay. You can still make buy. You definitely need one for tier 5 for sure. If you can't afford one by tier 5, most likely you will not succeed at defeating Bloonarius or all the other bosses as well. So some of the towers that you can utilize for tier 4 for if you don't have a Paragon is my personal favorite, Super Monkeys. So Super Monkeys, as I was mentioning earlier, can be really good for bosses, especially if you do them correctly, and especially for a top path. If you do a top path for a tier 4 Bloonarius, or just bosses in general, you usually can have some good success with them. It doesn't have to be anything super crazy for tier 4. Like, you don't have to have a true Sun God when it comes to tier 4. That would be nice, but if you can't afford a Paragon, chances are you can't afford a true Sun God. But if you can have a Sun Temple, if you can manage to get a decent degree for a Sun Temple, or a decent level or decent strength for a Sun Temple, you should be just fine. If you have a Rod and a Mad already at this point, don't sell, and you can't afford a Paragon, don't sell them. Don't sell them. They'll give you an immense amount of money, so they should be able to help you out when it comes to a Paragon. But if you sell these guys and you still can't afford a decent degree for a Paragon, keep them on the table. You might have to refresh or whatever. Just keep them out, keep them on the floor here. Having a decent level, a decent strength when it comes to a Super Monkey, when it comes to a top path Super Monkey, I mean, the absorb towers just as what Paragons do. It just depends on what's in their radius instead of globally, and it also depends on what towers you sacrifice. The general rule of thumb is if you can sacrifice 3 different types of towers at $50,000 each, you're maxing out a Sun Temple. A Sun Temple is going to cost you anywhere between, what is it? I think it's like 85,000 on easy difficulty, like this is here for this week. which is 85,000, all the way up to like, it's like 120 or 140,000 or something like that. For a Sun Temple, but that's not including the towers that you're sacrificing. So you need basically 150,000 on top of the cost of the Sun Temple itself. If you don't have that, that's totally okay. As long as you have something to sacrifice for the Sun Temple, that's great. You're doing fantastic. I will note that a Sun Temple just by himself, without any sacrifices period, will probably not be enough. I'll just let you know right now that it will probably not be enough. You need some sort of degree of sacrifices across 3 different types. If you do 4, it doesn't matter. You need some sort of sacrifices across 3 different tower combinations, whether it's military, primary, magic, or support here. If you have 3 different sacrifices from 3 different towers, from 3 different tiers here or groups here, whether you hit 50 or not, 50,000 or not, you should be able to have some sort of decent strength when it comes to a tier 4 Sun Temple. If you can max it out, that's even better. Because that combination of everything is less than a Paragon in most situations. So if you can't afford a Paragon, go a Sun Temple. If you still can't afford even that, you're probably just screwed, if I'm being honest. But alas, at the end of the day, get that Sun Temple out, get that going. Some honorable mentions is the Avatar of Wrath, which I was mentioning here. So you get the combination with these guys here. You keep the combination with the Rod and the Mad here. You should be fine. Maybe get some other towers. Maybe get some other tier 5 towers out there. Maybe get some of the ninjas out, like a Master Bomber down here. Maybe get, some Ice Monkeys do really well. Maybe get some snipers out. Get something going. A combination of multiple towers. If you can afford that, you should be just fine. But ultimately, if you can't afford a Paragon, the backup is go to the Sun Temple. If you can't afford a Sun Temple, you probably screwed up on farming, and you probably need to start over if you don't die already at that point. But the last is all trial and error, and I know you can do it, and I know at the end of the day that if you use this guide, or you follow other tutorials like from BTD6 Phoenix, or some other tutorials like Ethan Reed, or H-Bomb, like that sort of thing, like you follow some of those guys as well, you should be able to defeat Bloonarius and other bosses just fine. So we'll see here shortly in just a minute on how we can defeat Bloonarius. For a tier 4, I should say. Alright, so we arrived to a tier 4 Bloonarius, right? But before we do that, we're actually going to finalize getting the Paragon done. I'm going to set him probably... I was going to set him maybe like right here, but it's so far at the beginning, I'd rather get him done in the middle maybe? Yeah, let's set him right here in the middle. So let's take care of this. Should be like 30 something. Yeah, 34. So that's not bad at all. That's fantastic. Like this is, like, I'll be honest, with this week's boss, this is probably more than enough for a regular boss. You definitely need more for Elite for sure, but we're about to hit tier 4. He's going to handle him just fine, and he'll probably handle tier 5 Bloonarius this week just fine as well. Like, he'll beat them both pretty quickly. We're going to do more than that. We're going to go far, and obviously you guys can see how far we've come just for a combination of some of these farms here. So, like, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 farms plus 3 with this guy, right? And also he's helping making money as well with the combination of these guys. So you can see just that, like, we didn't even do crazy farming, and we still have an immense amount of money that we're making every single round. Like, this is fantastic. You guys can do way more than this and be ultimately even more off than this. So, but this is just basically the basic necessities. When it comes to tier 4, as I was mentioning earlier, if you can't afford the Paragon, try to go for that Sun Temple. If you can't do that, you're probably screwed. Probably throw down the Avatar Wrath, that combo. You should definitely have that money at that point. But even then, even with the combination of these two guys, and the Avatar Wrath combination, you probably, I don't know, maybe this week, yeah, but like normally at normal health, probably not. Especially if they inflate the health at like 150%, yeah, definitely not. So if you can't afford the Sun Temple, or I'm sorry, if you can't afford the Paragon, go to the Sun Temple if you can definitely afford that. Anyway, so let's go ahead and get started with tier 4, and let's see how fast we can beat him, right? Oh no, he might beat us. We may not be able to get through this at all. Like, this is tough, man. Like, I don't know, dude. Like, I'm kind of nervous. I don't know if we'll beat him. Obviously, you can tell that we beat him extremely quickly. Like, that was absolutely fantastic. If we had a decent degree Paragon like that, and he defeated him that quickly, you can obviously tell that he should be just fine with handling tier 5 by himself. But, alas, we will get something even better. We'll go a little bit more crazier. We'll get a couple more Paragons just to see how quickly we can defeat him. I want to see if we can defeat him in one round at tier 5. Alrighty, so now we're at the forefront of tier 5 Bloonarius. We have gone completely overkill. We're gonna defeat this very quickly. Now, the only downside, so we got the Dark Monkey Paragon, and we also got the other two as well. But the only downside, so we got the Bloonarius, or I'm sorry, Bloonarius. We got the Boomerang Paragon and the Ninja Monkey Paragon. The only downside to this is if I would have farmed a little bit harder. Well, there's two downsides. If I would have farmed a little bit harder, we could have gotten a fourth one, even though it's not needed at all. Like, this is completely overkill. Or I could have done Ace Paragon and got like a decent Ace Paragon, like especially earlier on. But also the other downside is, like, this is only a degree 1. This is only a degree 1. Even though like I put like the extra towers with them, like I spent extra money on it, I couldn't even get like I couldn't squeeze out like a couple extra droplets of a couple extra degrees or anything like that. So ultimately, I mean, it is what it is, but ultimately a Paragon's a Paragon. They're still gonna do decent. We're still gonna destroy him fairly quickly. I'm gonna sell all my farms. We're gonna sell that. We're gonna do where is it? Right here. We're gonna get one of these guys. We're gonna put, where is it, village? We're gonna put village next to him. Yeah, we're just going crazy here. We're going wild here. Helicopter's really good for bosses as well. Top path and bottom path, I should say. Alright, let's see what we do. Yeah, not bad. We defeated him fairly quickly, so that's great. That was completely unnecessary, but I appreciate y'all for watching. I appreciate y'all for tuning in. If you like the video, like the video. If you like the video, subscribe, ring that bell. Let me know down in the comments below what other BTD6 videos you want to see from me next. I appreciate y'all for watching. I appreciate y'all for tuning in, and I'll see you next time. Peace.